Thank you, Zoom, for letting us know. So now I want to thank our sponsors. We are pleased to welcome Shannon Spencer from Advanced Professionals Insurance and Benefit Solutions, who along with Business Health Trust are our sponsors for this series. So Shannon is going to share a few remarks with us. Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks, Lee. Like she said, my name's Shannon, and I'm the Training and Events Manager for Advanced Professionals Insurance and Benefit Solutions, which is the wholesale benefits division of Newfront, which was formerly ABD and Insurance Financial Services. So we help trade groups and other associations, such as the Seattle Chamber, provide health insurance and other employee benefits to small and mid-sized companies throughout the state. As a sponsor, I'm here today representing the Seattle Chamber's program, the Business Health Trust, which offers medical, dental, vision, and life insurance to Chamber members. Because we negotiate these benefits at a wholesale level, you could think of this kind of like a Costco model. We are able to offer businesses with between 2 to 199 employees the kinds of prices and insurance plans that are more comparable with what larger companies have access to and are offering. So this gives our region's smaller companies additional negotiating power when they're trying to hire in this competitive job market and also with retention. So my role here is to help you connect with our services and make you aware of the employee benefits available to you through the trust in your membership. Again, I'm Shannon, and I'm here with Advanced Professionals representing the Business Health Trust, which offers employee benefits to small and mid-sized companies that are members of the Chamber. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Shannon, and thank you to our sponsors. So let's get going to the main program. You're not here to hear from me. You are here to hear from our great panel. So I will start by introducing our moderator, who will then introduce the panelists and get us going. So our moderator is Terry Onestak, who is the president of the Washington State chapter of Meeting Professionals International, which is the largest meeting and event industry association worldwide. They provide education, networking opportunities, and a prominent voice for the promotion and growth of the meeting and events industry for planners and suppliers. Terry is a graduate of Seattle U and is a certified meeting professional, an experienced event director with a passion for delivering knowledge, culture, and brand by bringing people together to learn, network, and collaborate. So Terry, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, inviting me to be here today, Lee. And thank you to our audience for joining us for what I hope to be is going to be an informative discussion on the state of the meetings and events industries in our region. As we emerge from the global pandemic, meetings and events industry has faced some real uncertainty. How long will it take to recover? What will change? Will meetings and events make a comeback, and when? There's a lot of unanswered questions, and every time we turn a corner, something new keeps happening and the recovery flattens. Just a few months ago, all indications were that meetings and events were coming back faster than we had anticipated. But in that short ensuing period of time, we have seen the regression, with companies and nonprofits canceling many in-person events and many organizations delaying their return to normal operations, thanks to Delta in particular. Our industry has experienced these downturns before. Post 9/11, the economic challenges about a decade ago, but the industry is really resilient and we have a tendency to come back stronger as a result. The focus of this webinar is really timely. Just last week, the Washington State chapter of Meeting Professionals International hosted a multi-organization regional conference focused on how we can take the lessons that we've learned since the start of the pandemic and to transform them into a brighter future for everyone involved in the industry. We looked at a variety of different challenges, things like motivation, changing trends in food and beverage, labor and supply chain issues, technology, contracts and sourcing, and diversity and inclusion. And what I think we really discovered was that our professionals are very dedicated and committed to leading this industry to new and improved heights. Today's panelists are leaders who bring a variety of perspectives and will help us understand that as we reemerge from the pandemic, the meetings and events industry will be different as we enter this new era that many of us are calling the Great Reset. So our first panelist today has had a family emergency and may be joining us a little bit late. Annie Aldridge is the Director of University Events at the University of Washington, where she leads a team of planners who develop and produce presidential advancement and executive level experiences. Recent highlights of her career have been in producing the tailgate for more than 6,000 Husky fans at the 2018 Rose Bowl game, designing an epic raising of the beam celebration at the newly constructed Computer Science Building, and most recently, bringing the university community back together through various experiences after this 18-month live event hiatus. Annie comes from a family steeped in Seattle history, dating back to the late 1800s, and has a love for the city and for the people who call it home. She's motivated by her love for creating and engaging meaningful experiences, her passion to mentor and lead a team, and the privilege of telling stories through live events of the people who create real impact through and for the university, the city, and the world. Josh LaBelle grew up in Southern California and graduated from UCLA with a degree in world art and culture. He spent 4 years with the William Morris Agency in Los Angeles, starting in the mailroom and eventually working as an assistant in the music division, booking concerts. He spent several years working as a professional musician, primarily with T-Bone Burnett and Sam Phillips, recording and touring. He moved to Seattle in 1996 and soon began working with the Paramount and More theaters in programming. Since 2001, he has served as the executive director of the Seattle Theater Group, a nonprofit performing arts organization, overseeing the operations of the historic Paramount, More, and Neptune theaters. STG presents more than 700 performances each season to more than 1 million attendees, and also produces a multitude of education and community programs. Marka Wechter is the CEO at SHW, an experiential events agency. She draws on 25 years of professional leadership experience within a myriad of sectors, including airlines, travel technology, travel agency, corporate events and content strategy, coaching, yoga, and nonprofit management. Marka brings a keen ability to quickly align resources around a common vision and build a culture of trust through inclusion and transparency, ultimately delivering strong business performance, process efficiency, and product innovation. Marka has led 2 companies, Highwire and Metropolitan Travel, through to an acquisition by a Fortune 100 organizations. So thanks you all for joining us on our panel today. Hopefully we will have Annie joining us soon. So the first thing that we want to kind of talk about a little bit is kind of figure out how we all fit into this big picture. Marka, the names Seattle Hospitality, Howard Wright, and SHW are really synonymous with the Seattle events scene. Briefly tell us about how your organization fits into the big picture of meetings and events in the region. You're muted. Marka, you're mute. There you go.
Great. Thank you. You know, how long have we been doing this? Well, thank you for that introduction, Terry. SHW fits in as we've been originally a destination management company, which we still have today, but we fit in because we've been in the area for 45 years. And we've always been a part of everything from destination management to event management, to production, to registration, to transportation. So we service really a lot of the local corporations. In fact, Annie, I'm sorry to hear she had a family emergency. She is a valued client. We work a lot with the University of Washington, so hopefully everything's okay there. But that's how we fit in. We help people get their events done.
And Josh, the same question to you. How does STG impact the local events community?
Well, you know, pre-COVID, our organization is doing about 700 performances a year, plus a couple hundred education and community events each year. And for 3 years in a row, serving more than 1 million people. We are the proud operators of 3 of our city's finest historic theaters, the Paramount, which we actually own, and the More Theater and the Neptune Theater, which we have long-term leases to operate. I'd say another big part of our impact is we employ roughly about 800 people each year prior to the COVID closure. If we're looking at our numbers and our financial impact, you know, we have we have roughly $150 million economic impact on the region every year. And that's based on using a formula that takes our ticket sales and multiplies them by about 2.5 times or 3 times. And that's a formula that the League of Broadway Theaters believes accurately represents an arts business's overall economic impact here. We're really community focused. While we may be serving 1 million people a year, I'm most proud of staying focused on diversity of who's on our stages, in our seats, and pursuing DEIA work that's long been a stalwart of our organization. I'm proud of the artistic development that we do, helping bring young artists up in professional development so that one day they could have a career as an artist. One of the puzzles I think exists in this region that we're working to have an impact on is making it easier for an artist to make a living here and not have to move to Los Angeles and New York, Nashville. And that's slow going, I got to be honest. We've got some puzzles ahead of us to try to fix that, but there's not enough people that are able to make a living only working as an artist here in our region, and that's something that we're trying to do. I can keep going on and on, but I want to be mindful of time here, Terry.
Sure. Before we kind of wrap up this question, I also want to throw out there for our audience that the meetings and events industry in the region also includes a lot of different associations, as well as hoteliers, hotels, venues. We have several, convention centers and groups that are all part of this larger community. So there's a great impact on the region when we have these slowdowns and these challenges within the industry. So
it's always fun for us whenever we can collaborate as well with the meetings and event industry too. That tends to happen a few times a year with our friends at the convention center. And that's really cool. And I hope there's more of that in the future as our convention center is in the process of growing.
Yeah, I think we definitely see it as a large organization, a large opportunity for organizations to come together and really represent the whole big picture, because hospitality, meetings and events, and live events all have such synergy together. So, arguably, COVID has had really probably the greatest impact on meetings and events and the whole industry in the past decade. I think there's been, quite a bit of impact, and I think that we're sampling some of it today with virtual events. And I was going to ask Anna a bit about, kind of how virtual programming has, already been such, something was strong in the world of academics. And so I have to imagine their transition to that was a little bit easier than many of the other parts of our sector. But I think there's been a lot of challenges and work done trying to become tech savvy and bring in technology into this transition. Marka, how have your clients been impacted by the pandemic, and what are they doing to try to address that?
Well, my clients run the gamut of how they've been impacted. Interesting you bring up Annie. We just supported them on a gala for their donors. And when we originally were helping them with that, we were planning for an in-person event, because it was late June when the planning started in July. And as the story goes, by the time it rolled around on September 17th, we had a virtual event with a small group of people in the room. So I think one of the biggest impacts is it's created a lot of uncertainty. And so people are trying to plan and are, want to have their events in person, because they really feel the closer connection, and the results from a live meeting are stronger for most of our types of companies that we support. So I would say their biggest impact that's universal is that uncertainty. So we do a lot of planning, unplanning, replanning, and a lot of crystal ball coaching, trying to figure out where we're going to be by a certain amount of time. And we've done a lot of meetings in the last little while. From right after at June, we had some good meetings early July, and then we just completed a big festival back in Brooklyn, New York, with 1,500 people. And I think the impact is everybody wants to make sure that they're doing the right thing for COVID and for the community. And so it's a combination of taking that uncertainty, trying to make a plan that works with wherever the meeting's being held, to keep it COVID safe. And then oftentimes, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of cancellations and rebookings, and we're really hoping that we will meet again, and we will meet again coming up. And we have some large things at the convention center coming up in the next 2 months, one in November and one in January. And I'm pleased to say they're both made final decisions within the last little while that they're moving forward. And those are several thousand people. So that's great for the economy. It's great for downtown Seattle. It's great for Josh LaBelle and STG, because we like to tell everybody what's playing over there. And so we're excited to see things opening up again. But the impacts have been, all over the board.
Yeah, it's definitely been felt everywhere, where that the whole uncertainty component, like you say, you start down a path, you get 3/4 of the way there, and then all of a sudden you're making sharp right or sharp left and doing something very different.
Yeah.
So I think we all kind of feel a bit of that pain.
Yeah. Hard on planners, because planners are planners. They don't like to be unplanners, and cancelers. So
Exactly.
it's challenging. One other impact I would say that that's a universal impact, is that it has been hard on morale for a lot of companies. It certainly has been for the meeting industry and the hospitality industry, especially last year when we had so much happening with civil unrest and all of the issues going on in Seattle. So I think we're really trying to pay attention to that. And one of the reasons some of our clients really want to meet back in person again is they feel that their people need to be together again, to create that connection and that closeness with each other that, we all do get a little tired of Zoom fatigue. But we're trying to make it as great as we can, but there's still nothing that replaces that in-person connection, like the difference between live theater and watching it on a TV show. That's kind of the encapsulated difference.
Yes, definitely. So Josh, obviously live events have really particularly been, hit hard by the pandemic. Tell us a bit about the challenges that your industry is facing, your sector.
Well, looking back at the closure, I can really speak from STG's standpoint. It was just crushing. We were closed for a solid 18 months. I think our industry largely took the attitude that we want to do our part. We understand that we bring people really closely together, and this is an awful situation for people to be able to transmit it. And so we had to do our part. We lost at Seattle Theater Group. We did our best and kept, people employed for like a good 4 months into the closure. But eventually, when it became clear that there was no clarity on how long this was going to go on for, we had to make some drastic reductions and reduced our staff by approximately 80%. And that's heart-wrenching.
It's heart-wrenching.
It's heart-wrenching because, what's at risk, and now we're catching up and kind of experiencing it. But, the organizational memory, your business memory, is at risk. When you have a company our size, there are relationships all over the place that are so important to serving our vision as the People's Theater. that ultimately we lost a lot when we lost people, and not everybody was able to come back because people had to go and find work.
Mhm.
And I think that there's still some trepidation around people wondering, how stable is this art sector? You're going to be able to stay open, and I have every reason to believe that we will. I see it also as my job to stay positive and keep myself inspired and do my best to inspire others. And at the same time, not look at this all through, rose-colored glasses. It sucked. The impact was devastating on our people and our business. The positive sides is that we have an enormous amount of education and community programs we do. I'd say the majority of those programs were able to move online and saw great success. So things such as Dance for Parkinson's. We produce these programs all over the region that have been in person for people with Parkinson's and their caregivers. Well, that went online, and people are digging it. And now it's back to being in person, but also online too at the same time. So we're able to see some positive things using technology, and that's had a good impact on our business. I think the other really interesting thing that our sector experienced was all of us had to get focused on federal advocacy, literally to stay alive.
Mhm.
And I've long experienced in the arts and cultural sector a silly divide between nonprofit and for-profit arts and cultural business. A divide that kind of goes like Broadway and rock and roll kind of are sometimes seen as more for-profit activities. Yet a lot of Broadway theater and popular music winds up on these nonprofit stages across the country, such as the Paramount. And then we have the music clubs that are all over Seattle, struggling like crazy, for profit. There's never been a reason. The advocacy efforts have always existed, but they were separated. And so the cool thing that happened was we all got together, and suddenly we were on regular weekly calls with opera companies, Broadway producers, rock and roll tour companies, and everybody was doing their best to get on the same page around what became the Shuttered Venue Operating Grant Program that delivered $16 billion from Congress to the arts and cultural community, nonprofit and for-profit alike. I could go deep into what that experience was like. It was enlightening, troubling, and ultimately successful. And it's what I think kept our sector alive today. I don't think most venues would have survived a year and a half without that federal support.
Right. Well, like you say, it's very important to have the different parts of the industry coming together, as one to really fortify the message. It just makes me think back to this conference that I referenced earlier that we held last week. And that was a conference that was in the Seattle area, meetings and events associations. It was born out of 9/11. It was, what can we do after 9/11 to support the industry? And that's what kind of created the opportunity for these events. And it's, here we are, 20 years later, and we're still meeting. And we're still talking, we're still working together. And so it's good to hear that the different industry groups came together to really promote that.
I mean, one last thing on that was kind of fascinating was that The nonprofits had the advantage during closure because many of us have strong stables of supporters, of donors who, thank God, kept their support strong. The music clubs, they don't have that ability of taking donations. They were really stuck. The producers of shows that we all love to go see, 100% of the revenue gone.
Right.
And so it was just really interesting to see how that played into that had an impact on how the legislation was shaped and eventually how the money was dispersed from the federal government.
Right. Well, obviously it's had a huge impact, and obviously, there's many scars as we come out of it. But hopefully
we're still scarring, Terry. We're still
Oh,
scarring.
exactly.
Just to comment on a couple of things Josh said, because he's so right on. I mean, I think one of the hardest things for all of us was, we really, when it first came out, we didn't know exactly how long things would be. So we, like Josh, held on to our team as long as we could. And thankfully for the PPP funds, that really made a big difference. But at some point we came to the same place that STG did, where we needed to let go, 70% of the people that worked for us, which after, struggling for talent and trying to build a best company to work for year after year, to say goodbye to these people that you love like family was probably the hardest thing I've ever done as a CEO in the many years that I have had the fortunate position of leading a company. And I got really depressed. Like, fortunately, my president, Brett Robertson, was able to be like, I got this, because for me, it was devastating. I felt like I'd let my team down by not being able to look after their livelihood. And I think for me, the lesson learned in that going forward, just running the company, is making sure that we always have the resources to really have a long run. We pivoted quickly, and I hate that word, as does everybody now, but we were doing a lot of video production and moved into all of that. But another thing Josh said that I think is important too, about now his dance program that is also in person and also online. When we go back to the new world, I think what we saw when things were all virtual is that we did create an inclusivity that had never been there before. We created geographical inclusivity. We created all types of people that could participate in things that they wouldn't have been able to before, just simply the cost of travel or whatever. So I think we're going to see that a hybrid option, which is not a less expensive option by any means, it's like doing both meetings twice, is a part of how you create that long-term inclusivity and keeping people together. So
Absolutely.
I want to add that on.
Absolutely. And you kind of also set me up for a little transition here into kind of our next topic, which is that scary word, pivots. After the start of the pandemic, a certain word, like you say, it merged and became the Association of National Advertisers 2020 Marketing Word of the Year. That word, obviously, pivot. While many people bemoaned it and it became a meme fodder, pivoting actually created an opportunity for many organizations to adjust their practices and, in many cases, find new lines of business. Many have started out with some temporary pivots, and they have shared that those pivots not only saved them financially, but it also become so successful that they're making them what I've been calling permanent pivots, something that they're going to keep and continue throughout their as part of their business going forward. So can you guys, Josh, you want to share? Do you have anything you want to share that you can share about, kind of how STG has pivoted or adjusted your practices? Were you able to use technology to do this? Are there things that you're going to keep and use going forward as part of your regular business plan?
I would like to think so. And it's ultimately up to the artist. So we are an artist-driven company, an artist-driven sector, right? And so, of course, during the closure, we had artists that we had worked with in the past and still will in the future, that started producing things specifically for us to share online and invite our audiences in. Some of it went really well, some of it did not. It was a little bit of hit and miss. And an example of something that kind of blew my mind was a group called Black Violin that normally comes and plays the Paramount for, I believe, 2 performances, and would sell about, I'm going to say 5,000, maybe 5,500 tickets, más o menos, you know. It's great group, really nice people too. Well, they suddenly brought us this this online performance. We had something like 12,000 people locally sign up to it and stay on. And it sort of blew everyone's mind, like, whoa, okay. It was free also. So that's something to be mindful about. And that was wonderful. So the question becomes, will artists like Black Violin authorize, support that kind of programming to continue into the future? We will, you know, we will actively support that when we have artists willing to do so. One idea that I know is being toyed about, particularly in music, is when something gets to like 90% sales, then let's trigger a lower cost online tuning in. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that. I think it's gonna morph a little bit over the next couple of years. You know, as businesses like STG get, you know, reopened and stay very focused on health and whatnot, I think in due time, you'll see some experiments like that come out. And I don't know what the formula will be, but I know there's going to be some efforts. Am I answering that question sufficiently enough? I will also say that our education community programs, so many of them will always now maintain online components to them. I think it's also there's an equity aspect to that, that is so important to us, to make sure that there's ease of participation.
Right.
And that's wonderful. And at the same time, we are an arts organization, and there's something inherently incredible about being in the same room together, junto, and sharing these experiences. And as wonderful it is to be on Zoom with you all today and have this shared experience, it's always a bit of a vacuum, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to communicate with you, Josh, if you noticed.
Right. It's a trip, right?
I really don't like the vacuum of events when we're online. And
yeah.
But I think what Josh is saying is something that's also moving to the corporate model, right? It's like, we know we want our participation in person, and we will open it up after we've sold out. Really, our in-person event piece, we'll open it up to hybrids, you know, not dissimilar from the football game selling out and then they can go on TV. You know, it's just the same type of thing, but it's not anything we were thinking about 22 months ago. So it's a nice way to expand reach and inclusivity.
Have there been specific things that SHW has done to, like say, pivot and create some new areas of business? Yeah,
we were already opening our production arm. We've invested a lot in some production, and we've done that the year before. So that was very helpful to us when we came through this. And we really found our niche in sort of the mid-sized production, partnering with clients, helping consult them what parts should be pre-recorded, what shouldn't, how to bring it together. and I'm going to call it the less expensive production model. So we do a simulive and broadcasting. We're not, the ones doing, we are supporting and helping a lot of those really large production related ones, but we have found a niche of clients that don't have the $1 million budget that need to create virtual events, but they don't want it to be just a Zoom call. And so we have worked a lot with those folks to make it interesting and more TV show-esque, and really taking the best of the pre-recorded broadcast world, mixing it with the live in-person studio, and creating a great, as great as can be done now,
Right.
with reasonable budget. But I will say, in the beginning, we saw really good participation in the virtual world. And Josh mentioned something the other day that I think is a really interesting stat about people showing up. We're seeing a lot of drop off now. People will register, but there's less folks that turn up. So I think that's kind of a trend we're seeing as people are not necessarily as enthusiastic as
Right.
participating.
Yeah, it's very easy to sign up for something and not show, especially if it's a low cost or free
Yeah,
and you don't have some skin in the game.
right.
I think these, you guys have given some good examples of kind of some of those pivoting opportunities. One of the ones that I recently heard was a smaller event planning company, and when her client base started switching to virtual events, she really decided to look into, well, how do we make sure that we're engaging our people, and what can I do as a consultant to help my clients engage the people that they're bringing to these virtual events. And so she shifted much of her business, and now I think she says we're currently her mix is about 50% of her business now is working with clients to develop like meetings in a box. So you're going to my meeting, I'm going to send you, a box with swag, with information or details, things that will help engage them in that meeting and get them excited about it. So, that's one of the things that, she's considering her permanent pivot, because she's found a lot of success doing that. And so, I think there's a lot of creativity, a lot of different ideas that have come out of this learning experience, and trying to take trying to make a little bit of lemonade out of the challenges that the industry has had over the past 18 months. So
Yeah, seeing the cooking shows and the bartending, mixing, and all of the things you can do with sending things out in advance. And myself, I'm very involved in Mary's Place, and we've supported them the last couple of years, and we've done the meals in a box, working with great Chad McKay and that group to coordinate how do we get meals out for those people watching the gala virtually, and things like that to complement it, or even put on, send out the same shirt so you can get a nice Zoom photo for your memory of 2020 and unfortunately 2021 of everybody in the same company shirt or whatever it is, to commemorate and keep that connection with
right.
your attendees.
Absolutely.
Well, Marka, you mentioned Mary's Place and fundraising, and I think I'd be remiss not to mention that so much of arts and cultural nonprofits fundraising successfully moved online for special events. And I would expect into the future that big in-person fundraisers will return, and there will be some kind of way for people to participate online as well. And I would hope that remains an additive.
I completely agree, because there are people all over the place, and they don't necessarily want to drop everything and be in Seattle or be wherever to come in person. But if they can still enjoy the show and donate online, I think it's great. Josh, did you by any chance catch the Mary's Place Shine Gala last week?
I did not.
Okay, it was produced by the Microsoft Studios team, who's been really active supporting them. But I have to tell you, because Josh and I have some history way back when to Broadway Bound, one of the contestants, they do like a voice type of thing, and they had 5 contestants this year. One of them was a young gentleman that from our Broadway Bound days from Dreamgirls, Ivory.
Oh,
And he
cool.
won. And it was
Awesome.
very exciting, and everyone should go check it out online because it's a great song about unity, and it's a nice gentleman that was from the Rainier Valley that participated with Broadway Bound, and Broadway Bound partnered with STG and all the team there to really get outreach in the South End. And so great example of arts and culture getting in at the early ages and continuing to help some of these kids as they grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right on.
Yeah. So, let's talk a little bit, and you kind of started leading into it. Let's talk a little bit about kind of some of the trends that we're seeing. COVID has tremendously changed kind of, how we plan meetings, events, both live and virtual. Planners and suppliers have had to look for a lot of different ways to be more efficient and more effective in each dollar that they are spending. We're also, seeing more and more venues and organizers are requiring attendees to show proof of vaccine and or a recent negative COVID test to attend events. So we're seeing a lot of new trends kind of coming to try to help rebuild the industry and make the most of what we can. Mark, I know you shared with us on our call recently that some of your clients have implemented the masking or vaccine policy, and that SHW has worked with them, at least one of them, to use technology to kind of try to help enforce this requirement. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as I think I mentioned the other day, a lot, people have used a lot of different registration tools. So really it's coming down to how are you uploading it? And by the way, it's not just our companies anymore. Washington state law, of course, has come out with this recently. So what we've done in depending on where we're operating, right? Since there's not a universal app that's working yet, we, require, in some cases, they have, even though people have been vaccinated, they require proof of a 72-hour COVID test. And that's, that's the real overkill, not overkill. I mean, it makes sure that you've got a lot less chance. And one fact I want to point out, Terry, that Visit Seattle sent out last week was, it's less than 0.01% of attendees going to a professionally organized event have the chance of actually getting COVID. So I think what we know from the supply chain is our restaurants are requiring it. They're masking their employees. We're making sure that the technology has upfront loaded and verified that, it is Josh LaBelle's vaccination card and Josh's and his registration, really mirroring those things together, and, having to kind of custom create it each time just because of all the different tools out there. So for example, when we were in Brooklyn, there's an app like that we're rolling out in Washington, different one right now, but the one back east was Excelsior, and it could only access COVID tests that were done in New York or COVID vaccinations done in New York. So if you weren't from New York or you didn't get your test there, you were put in another pile. And then we had a little custom way that we were managing the uploads of data and all that to ensure that nobody came in that wasn't either negative COVID within 72 hours or double vaccinated for the period. So, and thankfully we didn't find ourselves in the news. So
Always a good thing. Yeah. Josh, I know it's when the trend started with the vaccine requirements, it seemed to be something that was started really in the restaurant and live events industry. Do you feel it came from there, and has that helped spark the interest in it? I mean, I think it's been accepted pretty broadly, at least in our industry. So I think it's something that's going to be around for a while.
I would agree with you that I think it is going to be around for a while, and I'm happy to see King County government coming out with such requirements. I want to be careful how I say this, but it to me it's such a no-brainer that we have a responsibility to do all we can to lower the risk, help your neighbor, help your business get back on its feet, and let's carry on and do good by one another. So it was interesting because Seattle Theater Group made a decision well before King County government came out with their policy, and our decision was largely based on feedback we were getting from artists and patrons, combined with instinct.
Mhm.
And I don't. I think instinct sometimes is really critical, to listen to your instinct, your management's instinct, collective instinct around an important issue like that. So STG made that call, said, you want to come here, we'd love you to come, any of our venues. We need you to show us either a negative COVID test or proof of vaccination, and we're still going to require you to wear your mask. And I knew that we'd be losing some business, but I think we've had less than $25,000 worth of ticket refund requests so far. And to give you a sense of scale, like I think we have about $12 million, $13 million worth of future ticket sales currently.
Right.
So that gives you a sense right there in terms of how people are feeling about that decision. They're still willing to come.
Yeah.
So this is good, but I really I think I was so happy when King County government came out with this, because it is easier to enforce a decision that you make on your own. It's easier to do that when government is also laying down the law.
Right.
Because from time to time, there's certain artists or whatnot that will try to negotiate these sorts of things, and this is just non-negotiable. This is who we are. This ties right back to our vision as the People's Theater, a place where all are welcomed and represented, and health is critical.
Mhm.
Yeah, anecdotally, what I've heard from many event organizers that have implemented these policies, even prior to government getting involved, has been very positive. They haven't seen a dramatic decrease in attendees or people asking for refunds, et cetera. So that's been good to see that there's kind of a understanding that these policies are something that's going to help rather than hinder.
So there's a question in the chat. It says, for meetings, receptions, weddings, etc., in King County, starting October 25th, is it the responsibility of the venue or the organization putting on the event to make sure that everyone is checked for the vaccination cards or COVID test? From my understanding, from an arts and cultural standpoint, it is the venue's responsibility, not so much the organizer. So there could be a presenter or promoter that is working at the Paramount Theater, but it still is the Paramount Theater's responsibility to enforce that. And if we don't, we would be breaking the law, and we would be potentially subjecting ourselves to falling out of grace with King County government. And I don't know if there's fines or what, but it's our responsibility.
Mhm.
Marka, do you feel differently?
I agree, but I would say if we were putting on an event at the Paramount, I think it's really up to all of us to partner together and come up with what's the cohesive thing. It puts a lot of extra work on a venue to all of a sudden now be in charge of checking as they're checking in to do that. So what is the plan? How do we make it easier? How do we keep the lines lower? What can we check off in advance and people in advance to encourage them to get vaccinated? How do we simplify that entrance point and try and work together with venues and our vendor partners to make it smooth? So while it technically might be on the venue right now, certainly it is for general public pieces, but private events, I think it definitely, they still have the responsibility, but I think there is a responsibility that we all share as event
Right.
organizers as people putting on the events and the venue, like how do we work together to make this a safe place so people feel comfortable, to keep it at that 0.01%.
Right, exactly. Make sure we're making people feel comfortable, and so that they're willing to attend the events. I don't want to spend too much more time, but I just want to throw out a couple of other trends that are kind of happening, and particularly because so many of them affect the economy of meetings, events, and our industry. So for example, a lot of costs are rising because of labor shortages and supply shortages, as well as some of the different sanitation requirements that have gone into place because of COVID. So, we're seeing this huge change in the economy of meetings and events, where prices are probably going to have to rise at some point in time. And I've seen a lot of facilities and caterers and event managers, et cetera, looking at different ways to attack, how do you create a menu, for example, looking at different trends, looking for locally sourced, looking for ways to be a little bit more effective and efficient. Any other things that you guys have seen in kind of those types of things to kind of deal with the higher costs of meetings?
Well, I want to, when you first started talking, Terry, it made me think about something that just happened for us with a recent client. We had a fairly large meeting scheduled for New York, and the client was ready to move and go. And the hotel that we had it at couldn't guarantee that they'd be open because they couldn't find the labor. So ultimately, the event canceled. And this is a downtown large chain hotel in New York City, right near the theater district, which I think says volumes about how it's impacting our economy, the labor shortage. And I think that, yes, there's going to definitely be price increases from these suppliers as they go to open things up and trying to attract back their workforce that many lost. And I think it was you that said it earlier, Terry, or actually it might have been you, Josh, on the, theater people have gone off to do some other things. That's happened a lot in the event business. They have fond memories of their time working events, but they now have they don't have to take their job home at night, and they have decided to stay outside of the event industry. So I think there's going to be a lot of work in really getting people back in our workforce to be able to perform the way we did before. And that's all the large hotels and all the vendor partners.
And I would say for Trendston, to build on what Mark had just said, like it's that institutional memory as we that we sometimes struggle with, and then bringing new people on when we're not all in the offices together at this time, and most people in the arts are not still in their offices. We may be doing shows, but we're largely working from home. How do we bring people up and get them acclimated? So that's one of the trends I think that all of us are facing. And we found something kind of fun through a board member who volunteered to video one of our longtime key people, David Allen, who Mark and I also know together, who has been with the theater for like 40 years, our longtime COO. And so he's doing these videos of stories, and hopefully we'll be sharing that in time with staff members as a way of sort of documenting institutional memory. So that's an interesting trend we're grappling with. I would also say this is not a positive trend, but I think it's important, and especially in terms of Chamber of Commerce. Our drop counts are really in not very good shape. And what a drop count is it's the percentage of people who show up versus the number of people who bought tickets. So a lot of times, in regular times, 90 to 95% of the people who bought tickets are coming. Right now, we are seeing anywhere from 80 to 70% of the people come. So we're seeing, you know, we're seeing that that's not a good thing.
No.
And I don't believe, unfortunately, this is all due to COVID. I believe that there's concern, we're hearing it from our patrons about the condition of downtown and people not feeling comfortable, not feeling safe. I'll share with the with this group here, Seattle Theater Group has had to add to our security. We've had just like wacky stuff going on, and between our own increased security and our COVID protocol costs, it's a $75,000 a month ticket right now for us.
Wow.
30,000 of that is directly related to security.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I bring this up for people to just to create your awareness. And if we want to see our economy rebound, arts and culture is usually a big part of that recovery.
Absolutely.
And for us to recover strong, we're going to need a healthy city, and we need more people letting our city leadership know that this is important.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely a lot of opportunities to create some change, and we need to really be pushing for that to make that economic recovery happen.
There's a lot of people working really hard on it, but Josh, as a destination management company, the way that works is, we do both event management and destination management, but destination management means we work with associations that sometimes select Seattle 3 to 6 years before they actually come to Seattle. And when I first started this job that I'm in now, like 7 years ago, I would take the clients out and they would literally say, what happened since the last time I was here? They'd be staying at the Sheraton, coming out. And I know we want to talk positive about downtown, and we want people to come back downtown. And everybody on this call is probably, knows why we need a vibrant downtown. But it really is impacting in ways that people can't even imagine. I mean, when someone's coming on a site selection to choose Seattle, and not that Portland and San Francisco look any better, I might add, but it deters them. They will look at some other places. They'll think about other things, and we need to get that Third Avenue safe, and we need people to feel comfortable in our town, and we need to make sure that we have the right people in our city attorney's office, and we need to hold people accountable when they're committing crimes.
Right.
SHW was robbed in June. Okay, but this is one of those, like, let's look for the optimistic side about this. We lost, I think, something like 40 computers in the light of day. We did repurpose it by buying broadcasting equipment and some other production things. So that was the bright side of the insurance piece. But this happened in the daytime, and there wasn't a police officer to come. And it wasn't the police officer's fault there wasn't a police officer to come. They were on a more serious crime that was in the middle of being committed. And by the time someone called us over the phone to take a report for a crime that was, close to $100,000, my president who gave the report felt so sorry for the police officer who'd been hurt in the Capitol Hill riot before. It just speaks to things are broken. They need to be fixed. And more than anything, I hope people come out for the election and really take a look at some of these new candidates in there and help us make some good choices.
Yeah. So as we look at trying to, promote our city, recent news that I'm sure most people on this call are aware of, Tom Norwalk, the CEO of Visit Seattle, recently just announced his retirement early next year. So what should Visit Seattle be looking for in a leader as they try to replace Tom?
Well, Tom was perfect. Everyone loves Tom. I've known Tom for 30 years.
Absolutely.
And I think what we need is to find someone like Tom. And what made Tom great is he worked with everybody in the city. He worked with companies like ourselves. He works with the arts organizations. He works with the government. He's always trying to promote the best about Seattle. And he has the relationships to do that. And so I think that's, finding Tom Norwalk II is
Big
is a
shoes
good-
to fill.
is a good start to try to finish it, but there's certainly excellent people in that organization already. But I think those are the kinds of things that Tom did really well, is bringing this city together and keeping us all focused on what needs to get better in order to keep tourism prominent and going in this area.
Josh, do you have anything to add?
I feel I would echo everything that Marcus said about Tom. Those are going to be big shoes to fill. And the more we can find somebody who can continue to differentiate Seattle and speak up about the great attributes, the values that are here, the reasons that one would want to be locating your large business meeting, your convention here, I think would be remarkable. There is something very unique about the way Tom seems to be able to do this naturally, but then somehow continue to be effective with city leadership, county leadership, and state leadership in terms of like I don't think that there's a tourism budget in our state still. What the heck is going on? This is such an amazing place to be. And I never run into, when I'm traveling, I never run into billboards that say, come visit Washington State, or I want to see that kind of stuff, that beautiful mountain that's behind you, Terry. Like, come on.
And there used to be, Josh, there was like 20 some years ago, we did have a Washington tourist group, and I'm not sure what the final demise of it was, except probably no budget, but we don't. And that's very unique. I mean, you go other places and like you said, I mean,
it will pay off.
Yakima has a tourist budget, probably.
Yeah. I mean, it will pay off.
Yeah, it does.
It's definitely need that strong advocacy. So yeah, Leah just put into the chat box that if you have another question, please let us know. The last question that I would kind of throw out for maybe a quick answer, we touched a bit on equal equity and access to opportunities for the BIPOC communities. Share with us a little bit about what, I think this is an opportunity for the industry to really go into that great reset and make sure that, our industry is leaders in this. And so I'm curious kind of what's going on. Is there anything else that you want to add to that discussion before we wrap it up?
The only thing I would add is I have a dream that is working with organizations like Mary's Place and Plymouth Housing and some others, as we need to retool a workforce. How can we create some hospitality training programs and bring some people that are in, transition and are in a place where they need to find livelihood and are open to those opportunities? How can we create something together in the hospitality industry that really helps us find a new workforce and do good at the same time? That is something I've been passionate about and have talked to some others about. I know there's some models for it in other industries, including the arts industry. But then, second, I would just say what we've talked about on the hybrid meetings and continuing to have a virtual component so that folks from wherever they are and aren't going to have the financial means to necessarily come in person can still participate.
Terry, it's a really important question and one that I could spend a lot of time on. I think I want to make kind of three comments about this. Number one, arts and culture have gone through and are still going through a long overdue reckoning about our role in, frankly, advancing racial issues by not being as inclusive as an industry, by not being as supportive to artists of color and telling those stories on stages. So the entire arts and cultural industry is going through a long overdue reckoning that I very much welcome. Very much welcome. At Seattle Theater Group, I think the big change for us is we've become really intentional in dealing with this every day, and we've committed to a focus on staffing, on board leadership, who's on stage, who's in the seats, where we're advertising. We want to make sure that we are at least as diverse as the racial demographics of King County, and we're on that journey now. But it has implications into all that we do, where we advertise, who we do business with. I'd say one of the things that this is my third point, that one of the things I'm super excited about is we're a member of an organization called PACC, Performing Arts Center Consortium. There's about 35 major performing arts centers in the US and in Canada that get together twice a year. And the whole purpose has been largely to help one another. And it's been pretty loose. Well, there's a commitment within this group to really focus on doing better around DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. And one of the things we're rolling out is something called a BIPOC fellowship program. And it's going to start next year. And we're going to have 6 to 8 fellows each year that will go through a program. And they are all going to be people of color who are hopefully developing their professional skills and getting them ready to succeed people like me, executive directors and COOs and development directors across the country. And I think if we can affect leadership changes in our sector like that, a lot more will change in the years to come.
Yeah, that's great. I'm a little bit disappointed that Anna wasn't able to join us, because I know the University of Washington has a tremendous effort going on to really address these issues. So I just want to mention that. And I want to thank both of you for participating today. This has been a really, I think, a good conversation, and I hope that our audience is walking away with some good nuggets and understanding kind of what's going on within our sector. I also want to thank Lee for help guiding me through this and making sure that we all got together, and thank the Chamber for hosting this important series. I'm going to throw things back to Lee right now and let her wrap things up. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you so much, Terry, Josh, and Marka. That was a great conversation. I'm excited to even listen to the recording again and catch some pieces that I might have missed. Thank you to our sponsors, Business Health Trust and Advanced Professionals Insurance and Benefit Solutions. And then I did note it in the chat, but I did want to say it again. For those who are on October 25th, going to be affected by King County's new vaccination verification requirements. The Chamber has partnered with the county to put out some resources and toolkits. So you can go to kcvaxverified.com and find all of those resources there. We're also holding a webinar tomorrow afternoon with some restaurants and other businesses who have already had vaccination verification policies to hear some of their best practices. And then another one next week where the county will give us an update, and we'll hear from Clear, which is a third-party app that some folks are using to do that verification. So hope to see you at one of those. We really want to support you through this kind of transitional time and make sure all your questions are answered. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.